Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever wondered why we admire vintage cars more as they grow older, even with scratches, dents, and war? Not paint. Because those marks aren't flaws, they're stories. And what if relationships are the same? What if the real beauty isn't in how perfect they look at the start, but in how lovingly we maintain them through time, storms, breakdowns, and repairs? Stay with me, because this journey may just change how you love forever. Have you ever seen someone lovingly polishing a vintage car? They don't rush. They take their time, admiring every curve, every scratch, every story hidden in the metal. Relationships are remarkably similar. We all want something shiny and perfect, but real beauty often comes with age, patience, and a little rust. A vintage car isn't valuable because it's flawless. It's valuable because someone chose to preserve it. In the beginning, cars and relationships both feel exciting. The engine roars, the road looks endless, and every direction feels right. But very soon, reality introduces potholes. The paint might fade, the mileage increases, and maintenance becomes necessary. Many people think something is wrong when challenges appear, but in truth, it only means the journey has finally begun. A vintage car owner doesn't abandon the vehicle at the first sign of smoke. They lift the hood, investigate, understand, and fix it. Imagine if we did the same with the people we love instead of trading them in for a newer model. Vintage cars demand attention. They require regular servicing, gentle handling, and genuine care. Relationships too thrive on intentional effort, listening, understanding, appreciating. Neglect is like skipping oil changes. Sooner or later, the engine will seize. It's not that the car stopped working, but that someone stopped caring. Love doesn't die overnight. It corrodes drop by drop when taken for granted. A vintage car may not compete with modern technology. It may be slower, heavier, more unpredictable, but when you sit inside, there is an irreplaceable charm, nostalgia, character, authenticity. Relationships are no different. They don't need to be perfect, trending, or glamorous. They just need to be real. The world may admire speed, but the heart cherishes depth. And just like collectors search scrapyards for forgotten treasures, sometimes the most meaningful relationships are not the ones we planned, but the ones we patiently restore. It's easy to love when everything works smoothly. The true test is loving through breakdowns. Every repaired dent becomes a reminder of perseverance. Every replaced part a symbol of commitment. A vintage car is not just driven, it is cherished. A relationship is not just lived, it is nurtured. The joy is not in reaching a destination quickly, but in traveling together slowly, steadily, wholeheartedly, with grace, gratitude, and a little laughter along the way. Because on every journey, there comes a moment when the weather changes. Sunshine turns into rain, a smooth road becomes a winding hill, and suddenly the engine doesn't sound the way it used to. A vintage car owner doesn't panic. They know storms are temporary. They pull over, wait it out, and continue when the sky clears. Relationships, too, go through unpredictable climates. Arguments, misunderstandings, disappointments. These aren't signs to abandon the journey, but reminders to slow down, breathe, and realign. Sometimes a car needs spare parts that are no longer easily available. You search, you inquire, you invest time and effort. Not because the process is convenient, but because the relationship with that car is worth it. Emotional spare parts, patience, forgiveness, humility, are also not always easily accessible. We may have to dig deeper into ourselves to find them, yet every time we do, the relationship becomes stronger, more reliable, more meaningful. And isn't it interesting how vintage cars often attract curious observers? People stop, smile, admire, and appreciate the charm. But only the owner knows the hours spent repairing, cleaning, and preserving it. In relationships, outsiders may see only the photographs, the celebrations, the visible harmony. But the real beauty lies in the unseen: private conversations, silent compromises, shared vulnerabilities. Just as a car's engine determines its true performance, a relationship's foundation lies beneath the surface. There's also a certain sound to a vintage engine, imperfect, yet comforting. Modern cars may be smoother, but they lack that soulful rumble. In relationships, perfection isn't what brings peace. Authenticity does. Loving someone doesn't mean never disagreeing. It means trusting that even with flaws, the journey is still worth choosing every single day. Like an old steering wheel that has guided thousands of miles, trust develops slowly through experience. A vintage car doesn't rush to reach its destination. It invites you to enjoy the wind, the scenery, the music of the moment. Relationships flourish the same way when we stop keeping score and start appreciating presence. We don't always need grand gestures. Sometimes a shared cup of tea, a quiet walk, or a gentle smile is enough fuel for the heart. The world teaches us to accelerate, but love teaches us to pause. And yes, occasionally, the car may break down completely. Not because it is weak, but because it has traveled far. Instead of declaring it useless, a true caretaker rolls up their sleeves and begins restoring what once worked. In that restoration, something magical happens. Not only does the car return to life, but the caretaker also grows, learning skills, resilience, compassion, and gratitude they never knew they had. And just like that, they develop a deeper bond with the very thing they once considered broken. Isn't it beautiful how effort transforms not only the object of our care, but also the heart offering that care? In relationships, repair teaches us to love intelligently, not just emotionally. Anyone can enjoy the ride when everything is smooth, but it takes wisdom to stay when the road gets uneven. The most memorable journeys are rarely the easiest ones. They are the ones where perseverance became the fuel. Sometimes we may envy those driving brand new cars, wondering if their journeys are easier or more exciting. But a vintage car owner understands something profound: new does not automatically mean meaningful. The car that has weathered storms with you will always feel more personal, more yours. Powerful relationships are built over time, through familiarity, loyalty, and shared history. The laughter, the arguments, the reconciliations, these become the unique license plate that no one else can duplicate. There is also a special ritual before driving a vintage car. You check the tires, listen to the engine, maybe even warm it up. Not out of inconvenience, but respect. What if we approached relationships with the same daily reverence? A few kind words, a moment of appreciation, a gentle expression of gratitude. These small acts keep the engine of love running smoothly. Neglect invites breakdowns long before we notice the warning signs. And of course, every vintage car has its quirks. A stubborn door, a slow wiper, a dashboard light that flickers for no reason. Yet owners often speak of these flaws with affection. They give the car personality. In relationships, imperfections add character too. We don't fall in love with perfection. We fall in love with uniqueness. When we stop trying to redesign people and start embracing who they truly are, connection deepens effortlessly. Some people store their vintage cars away, polishing and protecting them, but never driving them. But cars were made for roads, not garages. Similarly, relationships aren't meant to be showcased only during celebrations or photographed for approval. They are meant to be lived through ordinary days, unpaid bills, unexpected detours, and simple conversations that stretch late into the night. And there comes a time, perhaps on a quiet evening, when the owner looks at that old car and realizes it has carried them far beyond distance. It has carried memories, lessons, tears, laughter, and countless moments that would have otherwise slipped away unnoticed. In that realization, they understand that value was never measured in speed or shine, but in companionship across countless miles, where two travelers learned, unlearned, and grew together, discovering that the true joy was never in reaching the destination, but in continuing the drive. Because the road ahead always holds another turn, another landscape, another lesson waiting to be discovered. A vintage car doesn't fear the unknown. It embraces it with quiet dignity, trusting the wheels that have carried it so far. Relationships, too, flourish when we allow them space to evolve. People change, circumstances shift, priorities rearrange, and love must learn to adapt. Just like old engines need fresh oil, hearts need renewed understanding. What once worked may not always work, and that isn't failure. It's an invitation to grow. And every so often, the journey invites us to pull over and simply admire where we are. Not because we've reached somewhere extraordinary, but because we've made it this far together. Vintage car enthusiasts often gather, sharing stories of road trips, repairs, and unexpected adventures. They celebrate the journey, not the destination. In relationships, we sometimes forget to pause and honor shared victories. No matter how small, surviving a hard week, navigating a difficult conversation, or supporting each other through ordinary life, appreciation turns routine into something sacred. There are also times when others may not understand why you hold on to an old car. They may suggest selling it, upgrading, moving on. But the owner knows the emotional mileage engraved within it. Relationships can face similar scrutiny. People may question your loyalty, your patience, your effort. But love is not a public poll, it is a personal promise. Only the ones inside the journey truly understand its worth. Authentic connection doesn't need validation, applause, or audience approval. It just needs two hearts willing to keep showing up. And isn't it humbling how vintage cars teach us acceptance? They remind us that beauty doesn't always arrive new, loud, or polished. Sometimes it whispers through chipped paint, worn out leather seats, and stories embedded into metal. Relationships whisper too, through familiar laughter, thoughtful silence, a hand held without being asked. These subtle gestures become the emotional horsepower that keeps life moving forward, even on uphill climbs. With time, the driver also changes. They become more attentive, more patient, more skilled, not because someone instructed them to be, but because the journey naturally shaped them into who they needed to become. Relationships refine us in the same way. They soften ego, expand empathy, teach communication, and remind us that love isn't something we find one day. It's something we continue to build, repair, and rediscover mile after mile, honoring the road traveled and the endless horizon still waiting.